This is the Amazing Teacher Podcast with Sam Rangel, episode number 16.
Welcome to the Amazing Teacher Podcast, where we sit down with amazing teachers and pick their brains for tips, strategies, and ideas that you can take into your classrooms and be amazing. Now, here's your host, Sam Rangel.
Welcome, amazing teachers, to the 16th episode of the Amazing Teacher Podcast. This is Sam from successintheclassroom.com, and I want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to listen to the show. It means a lot to me that you're finding value in what these amazing teachers are sharing in these 30 and 40 minutes that they have with me. I know I find myself ending each show inspired and thankful that I get to do what I do for a living. You know, being an educator, especially in these times with all the resources available to us, it's amazing, you know, and I'm so proud to be part of a community of people who have dedicated their lives to help kids just be successful. And thank you for all that you do in the classroom, and thank you again for listening in. Today, my guest is Jeff Charbonneau. Jeff is the 2013 National Teacher of the Year, and he was just so cool to accept my invitation to be on the podcast. He's really busy, I know, being Teacher of the Year, so I appreciate him hanging out with me over Skype. And yes, I had to ask the question, what was it like to meet the president? You know I had to. Well, Jeff shares some amazing insights on the podcast. He talks about the importance of knowing your students and building those positive relationships. And I had such a great time just picking his brain again. And it left me inspired, like I said, to keep doing what I'm doing. So I know you're going to find great value in the podcast as well. So let's get right into the podcast with amazing teacher Jeff Charbonneau. Ready? Here we go. Today, I'm so happy to have the 2013 National Teacher of the Year, Jeff Charbonneau, on the podcast. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Boy, thank you so much for letting me be here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you for making time in your busy schedule to sit down and let me pick your brain. I really appreciate you being available for the podcast. First of all, congratulations on your Teacher of the Year award. What a great honor.
You know, it is an honor for me, I suppose, but really what I think it is an honor for all teachers in the United States. You know, I'm definitely not the best teacher in the U.S. I'm a good teacher, and I'm a representative of literally 3.3 million other good teachers across the United States. So if it's an honor for all teachers, then I'll accept it. But I don't know if I'll accept it on my own behalf, that's for sure.
Well, I think I think most of us teachers would like to be recognized for the hard work that we do, and I know that such an honor is just saying, good job, way to go, thank you for what you do for our kids. So, again, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Well, before we begin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your teaching career, why you became a teacher, and maybe a little bit about your journey toward the Teacher of the Year award?
Certainly. You know, I am from Washington State, a tiny little town called Zillah, Washington. I actually graduated from there from high school. Just like every high school graduate, I said there's no way I'm ever going back to that little tiny town. And as fate would have it, right after I graduated from college, that was the job opening in the area. So I started teaching right back in the same school I graduated from. And I've been there for the last 13 years, teaching chemistry, physics, and engineering, alongside many of the same teachers that I had as a student. And that's the amazing part. You know, I have some really good educators that I can follow in their footsteps that taught me both as a student and continue to teach me now as an educator. So I've been really, really blessed in that regard. You know, teaching chemistry, physics, and engineering is a lot of fun. I tell people I get to play with all the toys. You know, it's my job to call the fire department to let them know that I'm going to blow something up on the football field that day. You know, and so there's some advantages there. But what some people don't realize is that, you know, maybe being a STEM teacher, a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, I'm also the assistant drama director at our school, and I'm the yearbook advisor. You know, so I have a huge place in my heart for the arts. I think that they are vital to a whole school program, and we do need to be doing the best we can to teach not just the sciences, but also the arts, the humanities, and all of the other programs with the same level of rigor and intensity that we possibly can. Getting to the National Teacher of the Year, to be honest with you, was something that wasn't even on my radar about 2 years ago. I guess I kind of knew there was one, but aside from that, I didn't know much about it. The way it works is different in every state, but in general, you become the Teacher of the Year for your district, then moves on to a region, and then from region to the state level. And once you get to state level, there's actually 54 state and territorial teachers of the year, because we include the U.S. territories as well as typically the Department of Defense teachers also get a representative. They narrow it down to four, and then eventually they make their selection. This has been going on now. I'm the 63rd National Teacher of the Year, and so the program has quite the long history. What's really interesting about the program, though, is that this year I've been out of the classroom and had the opportunity to travel around the United States and see some of the really great things that are happening. We have some great examples of education happening in every single one of our states, and that's been the best part of it is being able to learn from other teachers and seeing what they're doing.
Wow. You mentioned about STEM teaching, and I spoke with Amanda Dykes. She's on
Sure.
she's been on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and she was mentioning about how teachers are adding an A in that acronym, making it STEAM.
Absolutely.
And you brought that up. How does the how do the arts get involved in STEM based learning?
Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of acronyms in the beginning. STEM education, the idea behind STEM, if you really look at it, is just simply students use all of their background and all of their abilities to solve complex problems. That's really what the STEM mentality is about. So, of course, that's going to include the arts. I have absolutely no problem changing the acronym to STEAM. No problem with that whatsoever. Particularly when I look at things like my yearbook classes. In yearbook and engineering sound like they're going to be different, but they are almost exactly the same. A good yearbook layout is the same as a good blueprint or a design sketch. We're still worried about dimensioning. We're still going to worry about filling the edges of corners. We're still going to be doing all those same design techniques, even though yearbook is considered maybe an art class and engineering is engineering. So there's a lot more tie to those programs than meets the eye. I've also said, I've been teaching long enough to remember about 10 years ago, we were all talking about something else. I don't know if you remember talking about reading at all, but reading used to be, it used to be important. That was what the main focus was 10 years ago. So maybe we need to change it and add an R and turn it into a stream of knowledge. Eventually we're just going to start adding all the letters of the alphabet back and realize that all programs are vitally important. That being said, of course, I'm going to be an advocate for STEM education, because I think that it is important for students to think that way. When I advocate for STEM, I'm not doing it, to degrade the other subjects. Quite the opposite. I think that we need to have an integrated approach to our sciences, where we incorporate history and we incorporate a really good science literacy program and the rest. So STEM to me is more of a way of thinking than it is a focus on particular subjects.
Right. That I taught language arts at one time, and I taught history. So I'm about as far as you can get from STEM-based education. But it seems like they're incorporated in each other.
Absolutely, and they really should be. A great cross-curricular example in my physics courses. There's actually a play called Copenhagen that was written, and it's a very interesting play. It's only got three characters in it: Niels Bohr, who's a famous scientist, and his wife, and Werner Heisenberg. And it's set in a realistic time frame. It's historically accurate, where we talk about the two major forces of the time on opposite sides of the war. You have the United States, the Allies versus the Axis powers. Werner Heisenberg was in charge of the nuclear program for Germany. Niels Bohr went on to work on the Manhattan Project. And they met for about 15 minutes in Copenhagen. And nobody knows what the two men said. It's this perfect intersection between talking about the history of atomic theory and the development of politics at that time, as well as merging in, the scientific inventiveness of these individuals at the time to develop quantum mechanics and quantum theory. And at the same time, it's a play, so we can talk about it from the art side too. So there's lots of ways that we can do really quality STEM lessons to incorporate all programs.
Awesome. Very, very, very good. Very good. Well, I want to pick your brain about classroom management. I want to pick your brain about what it is to be an amazing teacher. But I got to ask the question, Jeff, what was it like to meet the president?
It's one of those surreal moments. I got to be honest with you. Because I was named National Teacher of the Year, that meant that I got to bring my family with me. So not only myself, but my two small children. I have a son who's 7, a daughter who's 4, my wife, my parents, and my brother. We all got to go into the Oval Office together, meet the president, get the photo taken. My family then exited the Oval Office and went out to the Rose Garden, and I had another couple of minutes behind in the Oval Office with the president. I'm sure there were Secret Service guys there too. I just didn't see them, because I was looking at the president. But I say this with the absolute utmost respect. It might not sound like it, but this is the utmost respect. He was a normal guy. He treated me as an equal. We had a conversation as though we were just two guys hanging out, having a chat. And I can't give any higher praise to somebody than treating somebody else like an equal. So it was a great day. But again, it wasn't about me meeting the president. It was about the president taking the time to recognize all educators in the United States, and that's what it was about. I was there as a representative. I wasn't there as me. I was there as all 3.3 million teachers in our country.
Right. That's must have been a great experience, Jeff, and thank you again for sharing that with us. The purpose of the podcast, Jeff, is to sit down with amazing teachers like yourself and pick their brains for tips, strategies, and ideas that new teachers can take into the classroom and be amazing. I know in your experience, like you were saying, you've met many amazing teachers in your career and this past year going around the country. What would you say are some qualities that are common among these amazing teachers?
I think the first quality would be that they're passionate. They're passionate for their not only their subject areas, but they're passionate for success among their students. When you become a teacher, something goes off in the brain and you can't stop it. You start thinking about teaching everywhere you go. You're in the grocery store and you're thinking about a math lesson. You're in the bookstore and you're not looking for books for yourself. You're looking for books that your students might like. So they are absolutely passionate about the profession would be the first one. And then the second one is that while they're very passionate, they're also very patient. They're willing to let students learn on their schedule and learn in their time. All of us are people. We are individuals with needs, with things going on in our lives that can be very complicated. And really quality teachers are patient and allow students to progress along their own time schedule. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't push them and we don't try to bring them along a little bit quicker and nurture that, but they're very, very patient. And then maybe the last quality would be that they understand that the really best answer in education for any educational problem is it depends. That is the best answer to any educational problem out there is it depends. Circumstances matter. So just because your rules say this doesn't mean that your rules can't be bent in extreme circumstances. People ask me all the time, well, what do you do if a student does this? And the first answer is always, well, it depends.
Good. Awesome. That's great. Great characteristic. I like that last one. It depends. Um, you mentioned patience. Now, I know as a new teacher, they're going to be given a curriculum, maybe a pacing guide that they have to follow, that they have to cover these particular standards at this particular time.
Sure.
What would you say to a new teacher who's saying, how can I be patient when the student is just not getting it when I have to move on to the next unit by this time?
I honestly think the most important thing in education is not the content that we cover, but it's instead the relationships we build with students. Now, you have to take that with a little bit of an understanding here. I teach chemistry, physics, and engineering at the high school level, but I'm also an adjunct faculty member at 3 different universities: Central Washington University, Eastern Washington University, and Yakima Valley Community College. My students in my high school classes are able to receive college credit for taking those classes. They can actually earn up to 24 college credits. That means my classes are simply hard. They are demanding, they are challenging, they are really, really tough. But the only way that I'm able to do that, the only way I'm able to reach these really high standards is by putting content second and my relationships with my students first. I have to know them as people. I have to know them as individuals. I have to know what their motivations are, what their interests are, what their hobbies are, what their mom does for a living, what their dad does for a living, if mom or dad are even home. I've got to know all of that about them first so that I can change my instruction to match them. If I do that, then suddenly I don't have to worry about pacing guides so much because I'm already ahead of it. So that's the hardest part in education. You can make mistakes in content all you want, and it doesn't actually matter because you can fix that the next day. You write the wrong number on a board, you laugh about it, admit your mistake, and you move on. When you make mistakes with relationships with kids, that's when you're really in trouble as a teacher. So that's where your main focus needs to be, is on relationships.
Oh, that is so true, and such great advice for new teachers. Focus on relationships first
Mm-hmm.
and content second. What a great takeaway for our new teachers. I got to tell you, some as in my position right now, I do a lot of discipline,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'm finding that those teachers that have focused on relationships first
Mm-hmm.
hardly ever send kids to me.
Yeah. In my 13 years, I've written one referral to the office, sent one kid out of my classroom, for misbehavior, and that was my first year teaching. And looking back on it, I probably shouldn't even done it then, because what I was doing was effectively saying, I can't handle this situation, and I don't want to deal with you, so you go away. And instead, I should have dealt with it myself as much as possible. One of the things that I tried to stress to beginning teachers is take the job seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. And I think that's true in all professions. We'll have students who will come in that are having a bad day, and they're upset, they're mad. And you have to understand that you're a teacher. They see you as a position of authority, and so it's okay for them to get mad at you as a teacher, not you as a person, but you as a teacher. So you have to understand that maybe they're just lashing out for something completely unrelated to you, and it's nothing that you did. So take that student, take him out in the hallway, isolate him, and I say to them, okay, let me have it. And I actually let them vent for a few minutes. Normally in less than a minute, I find out what's really going on, and it has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the classroom, and has absolutely everything to do with them. That's where students are, and that's what we need to understand, is that we have to build these positive relationships to help them get through these times of need. If you do that as a teacher, all of a sudden your disciplinary issues go away, content goes way up, and honestly, you have a great time.
Yeah, so true, so true. I was speaking with a teacher this just today, who student came in late and was expecting some kind of discipline for being tardy,
Mm-hmm.
whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and he was already beginning to get agitated because what's the teacher gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher asked, why are you late? Well, I was out playing soccer and it was tie game and I didn't want to leave the game.
Sure.
And the teacher says, I get that. All right, you'll owe me some time, but go ahead, have a seat. And she didn't harp on it. She
Yep.
didn't
Yep.
lay into him because she understood the kid.
Yeah. It,
And I'm sorry, go
no,
ahead.
no, no. I'm just, if we see them as people, and we understand that they have needs, they have desires, they have wants too, within reason. It's got to be within reason, but we've
Yeah,
got to give them that flexibility. You give them that respect, you get it right back, and it pays dividends so highly down the road.
so true. Building relationships. Most if not all of the amazing teachers I've had on the podcast say that relationship piece
Mm-hmm.
is the most important to having a great year and being successful in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. Great point. Um, many new teachers, Jeff, and even some of us veteran teachers struggle with classroom management. We were talking about that just now. What advice would you offer new teachers who might be struggling with the classroom management, or maybe that kid or that class?
Sure. I think one of the first things to realize, fundamentally, the teacher is not actually in charge of the classroom. The kids are. I mean, let's face it. You walk into a kindergarten classroom, you've got one adult, 25 kindergartners running around. If they wanted to overthrow the teacher, they could. Okay, if all 25 of them rushed you, you wouldn't have a chance. Particularly kindergartners. They're fast, they move quick, they're hard to catch. And that's true all the way up to the high school level. So you have to realize the students will control that classroom. They'll control the environment. They'll control it all. What you need to do as a teacher is figure out how to make them in control in the way you want them to be. Okay, to let them know that they have the authority, that they have the power to change how the class is moving, but it's really under your guidance. So the more you actually give up some control, the more respect you get back, and the better it's all going to sync together. Everybody has their own classroom management plans, their own ways to do this. And you absolutely cannot match somebody else's plan. We've got some teachers in our school that use seating charts. They track how many times a student uses the bathroom over the course of a semester, and that works for them and their environment. I can't mirror that because it doesn't work for me. I'm a disbeliever in seating charts under most circumstances, but again, it's a function of my own personality and how I operate within the classroom. So when you're looking for that classroom management plan, if you see something that you wouldn't like as a student, don't do it because it doesn't match your personality. You have to do something that matches your personality, something that empowers the students and gets you working together as a cooperative effort in the classroom. That's what I do.
Yeah, so you talked about seating charts. I'm so glad you mentioned that you're not a big fan of seating
Mm-hmm.
charts, because I got a little bit of heat because I never had a seating chart at the beginning of the year, and the kids would be surprised. Where do I sit? Sit where you want. I can sit with my
Yeah.
friends. Yeah, sit with your friends. But the minute you start
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to your friend instead of me, then I'm gonna have to move you. And so they sit where they want. And the only time I had a seating chart is when I had a sub, and I had just had the kids, okay, write your name in the square
Mm-hmm.
as I pass the paper up so the teacher knows who you are, and I would move them if I had to,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you deal with it in class, but there's not really an issue if, again, you have you have that connection with the kids.
Right. Well, one of the things that actually I think helps teach students is how to appropriately sit next to their
Mm-hmm.
friends. They have the opportunity now to sit next to their friends. How can I use that to my advantage? How can I use my friend to help explain new materials to me? How can I use them to keep me on focus? And so it works. But again, if you're the type of teacher that doesn't work for, then you shouldn't do it. But I teach high school. A lot of my kids are sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So many of them have driver's licenses. And so I say, the state of Washington, where I live, is giving you a driver's license to operate a 70, or excuse me, a 2,000-pound vehicle at 70 miles an hour. And yet I'm going to tell you where to sit. I mean, so you got to give that respect to get some back.
Right. Very good. Very good. Very good. Well, Jeff, if you could sit down with a new teacher just starting out in their career, and you had time for just one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
Probably to be you and be honest. That you have to be honest with kids. They'll see right through it if you're not being true to you. That runs from your classroom management policies to the way that you instruct. I mean, just everything has to be genuine and honest. Don't be afraid to make mistakes either. And when you make them, own up to them in a very honest way. Actually, I apologize to my students all the time because I still make mistakes. I try a new lesson that I think is going to go really well, and then sometimes it blows up in my face, and I just say, okay, guys, I'm sorry. I thought that was going to work. My bad. We're going to start over. We're going to try it this way. So own your mistakes, be honest, and the kids will respond.
The power of an apology. I was speaking with Larry Ferlazzo,
Hmm.
another guest on the podcast. He said there's so much power in an apology. Not only do you keep that connection with the kid, but you teach the student how to interact with other people. It's a lesson there, real life lesson, uh, that you can offer with an apology. So that's
Absolutely, absolutely. And then the other one that goes right along with that is, empowering those students too. When you apologize, you show that you're kind of on their level. And so that doesn't bring you down, it lifts them up to where you are.
good.
So we empower them a little bit. Ask your students for help. There's a secret about people. All people, I think, want to be wanted. We want to be relevant. We want to be wanted by somebody else. And so our kids want to do work for their teachers. They really do. They might not know it.
Mm-hmm.
They might not admit to it, but they want to. And so if you can say to a kid, hey, I need your help with this. Will you help me do this? It shows, one, that you're human, that you're on their level, that you need some help, and two, it gives them value and allows them to rise up to your level. So it's between apologies and asking for help, I can't think of a better recipe for success.
Perfect. What great advice there, Jeff. I like what you said. It lifts them up to our level instead of the other way around. Awesome. Awesome. Do you have a favorite quote, Jeff, that maybe has inspired you that we could adopt here on the podcast?
There's so many of them out there that I love. I gotta be honest though. I actually start out my every class period of every school day the same way when my kids come in. So I'd be remiss if I didn't use it. I say, "Welcome back to another day in paradise." And it sounds really cliche, and whatnot, but I firmly believe that a classroom environment is a paradise. Because in my environment, it's 70 minutes is how long our class periods are. For 70 minutes, my kids get to be equals. We get to discuss, we get to create, we get to discover things for the first time. We're sitting in an air conditioned or a heated building, depending on the year. For the most part, the kids have something to eat or drink if they need it, because we have that ability there at the school. We are in a safe and nurturing environment for 70 minutes. How could that not be a paradise? And I have to share that with my kids. I have to explain it a couple times of the year. Why do you say that? Because that's what I need to do as a teacher. I need to focus in on, this needs to be an educational paradise for my students. It is my job to make sure for the next 70 minutes that they have all the materials and all the tools necessary to become better people. And so I say it at the beginning of every class period, not only for them, but also to remind myself to be a little bit game on, and to give my best.
Wow, great, great. When you compare sometimes our classes to home lives of our kids, it
Mm.
really is a paradise. It really is a safe place, a place where they'd rather be other than at home. So many of our kids come from home lives that would make us cringe, and so I think our job as teachers, like you said, is to make sure that this home that they have in our classroom is better than the one they have at home for some of these kids.
Absolutely. I'll admit I'm 36 years old, so I've got 20 years on some of my students. And even though I've lived that much longer than they have, they've lived more in their life
Yeah.
than I have, because of the experiences and the struggles that they've gone through. I sit down and I talk with some of these students, and I just shake my head and realize, wow, after hearing about your scenario, and I'm worried about whether or not you finished your chemistry homework last night. And that doesn't mean I'm going to let them off. I'm going to be there to be that one thing that might be constant in their life. That one person maybe that is going to hold them a little bit accountable for things. So I need to do that, but at the same time, I have to remember, it does depend on the circumstances. It depends on the kid, like we said earlier. And I'll tell you what, there are some kids out there that I am so proud of, because of what they have gone through and who they've become. I can't even say that I've lived half the life that they
Right,
have.
right. I tell kids who are in my office and I know they're having a bad home life. I tell them you can either use that as a crutch to fail, or you can use it as motivation to succeed. And
Hmm.
you can be successful in spite of all you're going through, and that'll even be a greater victory for you. But, and
Absolutely.
and again,
Absolutely.
what you said, you get to know them. You have to be that teacher to find out what's going on at home. You know, if you don't know
Hmm.
what's going on at home, then maybe a good time to ask some questions, make those relationships.
If you don't know your students, you're just all flat out and say it, you're not doing your job. Your job is to know your students so that you can give them the best educational opportunities possible. And the best way to do that is to be able to tailor your instruction to match their life. And that means you're going to find out a lot of things about them.
Well, can I use it as a quote there, Jeff? If
Absolutely.
if you're not, you
Absolutely.
don't know your kids, you're not doing your job.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, awesome,
Absolutely.
awesome. Um, I wanted to talk to you about your tweet today about zeros in class and how. What's your thought about giving zeros, real quick?
What the comment was, I said, if an assignment is late, does that mean that the learning stops? Should the assignment suddenly become zero because it's late? If I hand something in at 7:01 and it was supposed to be in at 7, does that mean I didn't learn anything? There needs to be a balance. A lot of people will claim, well, they need to learn time management and they need to learn how to turn things in on time. And, that is absolutely true. But at the same time, the goal needs to be about learning. And so you have to be able to strike a balance between time management and teaching that and teaching what you've actually been asked to teach in the class, which is content and skills. So I am not a fan of giving no credit for late assignments. Should there be some sort of a penalty of some kind? Yeah, probably. Should there be some leeway because circumstances get in the way? Absolutely. So in general, I think that anytime we start talking about the extremes, we go into a bad area. As with anything in life, the answer lies somewhere in the middle. And I think we need to be having more discussions like that on every single one of our education issues. I actually end up in the middle on most of them because I think that everybody is a little bit right and a little bit wrong in some
I
cases.
totally agree with the zero policy, and I'm glad you brought that up in the tweet.
There is already a absolute deadline. There is an absolute maximum deadline. The semester does end. So there is still time management, getting it done by the end of the semester. Now, I'm not going to say that you should be able to turn in all homework at any time and anything like that. I don't know about that one either, but it's got to lie somewhere in between. There's got to be a way that we emphasize the fact that we are giving lessons and assignments that matter. And if they matter on Monday, they should still matter on Tuesday.
Very true. Great, Jeff. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Jeff, what is happening now in your life that you are excited about?
What is there not to be excited about? I'm still outside the classroom right now as a National Teacher of the Year, learning a lot of things, going a lot of places, seeing a lot of great education happening. But I also know that I'm going to be back in the same classroom come the fall. So not only am I excited about what I'm having now, but I'm also excited about going back in the classroom. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
it's been a wild ride, a fun ride. But I want to get back in the classroom again. There's a lot of change happening, a lot of new things, and with each one of these new challenges comes the opportunity to have a voice as an educator to impact those. So no matter where you are on pick your favorite education policy issue, you have a chance to impact that. You have a chance to share the message of your classroom and your students, and that's pretty exciting to me.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else, Jeff, that you'd like to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
I just, if you're a teacher, if you're an educator, if you're a parent that's involved in education, just remember this. We are a nation of public schools and private schools and charter schools and all the rest, but we're, as a nation of educators, we provide all students of all backgrounds, of all abilities, the opportunity to be successful no matter the circumstances. And nowhere else on the planet does that happen in the same way that we do it. There's a lot of things happening in education right now, and so many of them are so good and so powerful and doing the right things for kids. We need to get that message out there. I don't believe that we're a failing nation. I believe that we are a succeeding nation that has plenty of room for growth. We have places we need to improve. I don't deny that. But what would happen if just each of the 3.3 million public education teachers went to the grocery store tonight and told one person one good thing that happened at school today? What would happen to the perception of public education?
Yeah.
That would be pretty darn powerful. And I think that you get the most motivation, you get the most movement for improvement out of positive comments and positive reaction. So if you're a teacher out there listening to this, start talking about education in a positive light because we will become what we say we are.
Awesome. You mentioned positive. That worked with kids too, right?
That's what we do in the classroom. When my students come into the classroom, the first thing I do is lift them up and praise them for what they're doing right before I talk about what they're doing wrong. And that's what we need to be doing with public education because that we know it works with kids. It will work with adults too because after all, aren't we just big kids?
Right. So awesome, Jeff. So awesome. So if people wanted to say thank you for sharing all your amazing insights today on the podcast, where can they find you?
I'm a big fan of Twitter of late. There's a lot of great professional development out there, so you can just find me on my Twitter handle. I'm at Jeff Charbonneau. You can also feel free to send me an email, NTOY, that's National Teacher of the Year, NTOY 2013 at ccsso.org.
Jeff, I got to tell you, it's been a great pleasure just sitting and talking with you. I really appreciate you taking the time out of, I know, your busy schedule to share with the audience your thoughts and insights on education, and especially some of these great tips that our new teachers can use and take into the classroom and be amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to be here, and to all the teachers out there, I'm going to echo it. Be amazing.
The Amazing Teacher Podcast is brought to you by SuccessInTheClassroom.com. Learn more about being an amazing teacher by visiting SuccessInTheClassroom.com or TheAmazingTeacher.com.